Hi, and thank you all for joining us today. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, just to reiterate, you are watching Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. And today we're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Please be sure and join us in the various chat rooms that you may find on all the different platforms. We would love to hear your questions and comments, that's for sure. And today I'm so excited because we welcome again Preston Dennett. He's one of my favorite guests, him and Dolly, to have on the show. So many books, so many questions. And today we're going to take a deep dive into one of his books. It's a volume of 5 books, and this is volume 5 called Not From Here, Selected UFO Articles. And I love how it consistently brings to light the often overlooked details and reoccurring patterns, but like that are in the UFO phenomenon and community. And we're going to be discussing things from the intriguing frequencies of twin contactee cases to very specific warnings conveyed by ETs. His book, I think it paints a picture of a far more nuanced version than what often makes it into mainstream discussions. And I really like that. So I'm very keen to delve into his book. We've got lots of questions. So with that said, Preston.
Hi, Carol Ann. How you doing?
I am well. How are you, dear?
Oh, pretty good. Not bad.
Good. Pretty
Enjoying
good is
the
good.
summer.
Yeah. Pretty good is good. So I read your book, of course, and I absolutely loved it. This is volume 5 that we're talking about. So before we delve into that, let me get your ticker up here in case folks want to reach out to you. Here we go. Okay, so you can find Preston on all social media platforms, including Preston Dennett at Weebly.com. So you can definitely head over there and see all of his books. And you have a Substack too, or no?
No, not yet. The social media platforms go up as fast as I can figure them out.
No, I know.
I haven't gone there yet.
Yeah, I'm itching to do that myself, and I'm on TikTok, but I kind of was wavering with TikTok because of all the fuss about it,
Yep.
But it's a good platform to get views and get the information out there. So I don't know, you're not on TikTok yet, right?
No, that's another one I'd like to conquer, but
I know.
these all of these have a little bit of a learning curve to them. But yeah, TikTok reaches a lot of people.
Oh,
So
it sure does. Yeah. It's kind of like a missed opportunity to get your info out there if you don't take advantage of it. So when I get some free time, I'm going to definitely look. Because you're right, it is a learning curve kind of thing. You have to learn, how to create the videos and what their requirements are and so on and so forth. But definitely worth it. It's funny because I heard a video the other day about people called bridge people. And I don't know if you've heard of that term yet, but it intrigued.
no.
No. It's us. It's not like UFOs or anything like that. It sounds like it though, right? But it resonated with me so deeply because the woman that made the video made a wonderful analogy of how like our generation lived in this pre-algorithmic universe where, we had rotary phones. Not that we're aging ourselves, but we did.
I remember them. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I think the youth of today wouldn't know what to do with one if it hit them over the head. But and she just made this beautiful comparison about, the times that we lived in and then like post all of that, and just dealing with, facial recognition and just all of it, the whole kit and caboodle. And I started thinking about ETs because back then there was like some talk of it, definitely, absolutely, but it was nothing like the way it is today. And I wanted to kind of hit you with that first before we delve in. Like, what are your thoughts about the evolution of this discussion, of how broad this conversation is now, but yet we don't have disclosure fully. We're not being told the real truth about these. So, for folks like us that can compare, the bridge people that we are to where we are now, what are your thoughts like on the whole spectrum of disclosure in this community?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's an interesting point because I've certainly thought about it. This was one of the reasons I didn't believe in UFOs because I'd never really even heard of them other than peripherally. This wasn't taught in schools. There weren't UFO programs. There was one, In Search Of.
Yeah.
That was about it. The number of books on this subject, you could probably, popular books count on, two hands.
Yep.
There really just wasn't anything out there. It wasn't really in commercials or science fiction, certainly, but not like songs and TV and video games. Video games back then it was Pong. That's what you had,
That's right. It was Pong. Yeah.
So it started to bleed in pretty quick, I think, in the 70s.
Yeah.
In the big cases like Travis Walton and Betty Andreasen and the Tahunga Canyon contacts and, Charlie Hickson, Calvin Parker.
Yeah.
And I remember some of the first early shows were like Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah.
And Encounters and Sightings and a few of these. But now,
of course,
looking
Star Trek and stuff like that, like you said.
Yeah,
so
which definitely kind of popularized the idea of it, but it wasn't being presented as factual.
Right.
Which is why I think it hit me like a ton of bricks when I'm like, oh my gosh, this has been studied by people for decades. I had no idea that there was a cover-up, anything like this. I had no idea. And now we see it everywhere. We're saturated. It's coming at every angle.
We are.
Ice cream bars or little UFOs flying around or candy or video games. It's in pretty much all forms of media.
It is. I even have Christmas ornaments right over here, a UFO and alien Christmas ornaments. So it's like, you're right. It's prevalent everywhere.
You can buy them on shirts and hats and probably underwear, though I don't know that I've seen that yet. There's an idea for you guys out there. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely evolved. And yet it's a bit ironic because, like you said, we're still kind of stagnating in terms of getting the truth out. And I think the reason for it is because our tax dollars are going for a cause that is to cover this subject up. I mean, plain and simple.
Yeah.
Project Blue Book, people often refer to that as a government UFO study when it really wasn't anything of the sort. It was a whitewash. It was a exercise in how to deal with the public and get people to think there's nothing to this.
Right.
And people still talk about Blue Book in terms of, popular culture, like, oh, this is a government UFO study. Not really. I mean, you can put that in quotes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I will say the last 5 years have been monumentous. Unbelievable.
Absolutely.
So there's definitely, I think we reached a tipping point. And I think this is due largely to the ETs, honestly, contacting so many people over and over and over and over and over until this became something you simply could not ignore.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know that we'll ever get full truth and transparency from our governments.
Yep.
Which I hate to say it, I'm a little jaded having been in this field for so long.
Yes.
But let's face it, they're still not talking about Roswell. Why not?
Exactly. And I agree. Part of it is a massive cover up for sure. But it's so disheartening with the advent of AI, because now, like, I used to get excited when I saw video content of craft and just anomalies in the sky. And I would always get excited wondering, is, wow, what is that? Is this real? Now there's so much corruption via AI in terms of video content that when I see something that someone supposedly took of a craft or whatever, my first thought is that's AI, that's fake. And it's kind of taken the beat out of it for me. I just don't get excited anymore looking at videos. And
Yeah.
it upsets me. It really does. It's a big concern. I mean, and that holds true for anything that we're seeing video wise. Because
I feel the same way.
Yeah, it's gotten that good.
Yeah, there was a documentary in the 90s, I think it was, 80s, called From Brandon Chase, UFOs Are Real.
Yes.
It had some clips of UFO, some really good UFO footage for that time, certainly. And at that time, if you wanted to fake a UFO, basically you had to dangle something from a string or throw a hubcap in the sky, which is sort of easy to
do
differentiate.
Yeah,
but now, forget it. Footage. I don't really even want to look at footage unless someone is willing to put their name behind it, sign an affidavit. There are multiple witnesses who were there, because it's, like you said, so easy to fake. CGI, Photoshop,
awful.
All of this stuff. There's multiple ways you can fake this stuff now.
Yeah, this is why I tend to believe in Billy Meyer's case, because back then, to achieve that level of fakery would have had to be, and with a man with one arm, would have had to be monumental. And that's why I love having Michael Horn on too, because the predictions alone from that case are riveting. So I don't know. It's just, and that's why I brought up Bridge People, because I don't know, it was kind of so much better back then, in especially in the world of ufology. I think it was so much more genuine. And I don't.
We had real researchers too. Donald Kehoe and Jim and Cora Lorenzen and Walter Webb, and people who are honestly boots on the ground researchers. Exactly. Not in it for a quick buck, not in it for fame. There were some hoaxers, but now it's the misinformation and disinformation in this field is so rampant.
It is. It is.
We don't have a lot of those pioneering researchers, James McDonald and Hynek, of course. Well, it took him a while to convert to the right side. He did. So.
What we have now? We have whistleblowers. That's what we have, essentially. And then they get a little name in the press, and then they open up their own, research company or whatever, and try to get funding. But, I don't know. What's your, opinion, your wholehearted belief on disclosure? Do you think we'll ever see it? What does it look like to you?
No, for me, the end game of disclosure is full truth and transparency. Show us the craft, show us the bodies, lay it all out. I don't think we'll ever get that. And we had whistleblowers early on. Bob Lazar was not the first. He was one that got a lot of publicity. He was viciously attacked. And now we've got whistleblowers coming out of the woodwork, except some of them are plain old bad actors. They are government agents.
Yes.
Inserting false information into this field. And some I don't know, how would I put it, patsies or stooges, being played, sort of, being fed information.
Right.
They're perfectly honest. But and some are absolutely genuine, but I think the vast majority of the absolutely genuine whistleblowers, they come down on them very hard. And they might get a little bit out, but if you've got real honest to God information, you're gone. People have died over this. If you look at some of Leonard Stringfield's witnesses, there's some harrowing stories with people that he's been associated with. And we know that the Roswell witnesses were threatened as well. So no, I don't think we're ever going to get full truth and transparency. Yeah. But, there is good news on this. The cover-up has failed. It's leaked so bad that we all know what a UFO is. anyone with any sense at all can just do a day's worth of research. If you're brand
Right.
new to the field and you dive in, you can only come away convinced.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's not like I'm disbelieving it. Like, to Dolly's point, she brought out that I'm learning a lot in this podcast, that my heart's in it, which it is. And I think she was talking about said, I can tell you right now, without being personal, the last 10 minutes of watching this, she has brought up more disinformation than truth and dooming the subject. I don't think I've been doing that. Do you, Preston?
No, I wouldn't say that at all. And right now, no, I haven't heard you say anything.
So either.
You know, regarding Billy Meyer, that is a controversial case. I happen to think he's a true contactee. Got all the books. I've looked at the photographs. There are some problems with the case, no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
But when he came out, boy, was he viciously attacked.
Oh, yeah.
There were like 5 attempts on his life.
Correct. Yeah.
Wendell Stevens went over there and talked to him personally, and he saw all this going on. Billy Meyer has some hundreds of witnesses who were there when the UFOs showed up. He's a genuine contactee. Some of his photos are flat out faked. Don't know why.
I don't know how that happened. According to Michael, they're not, but you know, who knows? I don't know. I'm just
Michael. I'm aware of Michael Horn. He's a very strong advocate for the case.
Yeah. Yes.
And that, you know, all the power to him. But I think we need to recognize that there are problems to this case.
Yeah.
So, but no, disinformation. I think all of us have to really tread lightly and be careful what we endorse, because until we know, we don't know. You know what I mean? There's so much information out there that it's easy to fall victim to it. I don't think you've done that, certainly not in the last 10 minutes.
No, my goal with anything is to look at both sides and to do the research. And like you said, there's problems with cases. There's problems with all the historically famous cases that have been out there. They've been debunked and rebunked, and you know, and I'm a believer. I truly am, and I think you know that about me. I'm not doubting the validity. I'm just saying that because social media has like polluted, corrupted this industry, it's made it more difficult for us to get to the bottom of things and to get disclosure. That's my
which is why I give kudos to anyone who enters this field, any contactee who comes forward with their story. You know, God bless all of them, because this is a difficult field for sure. I see a question here. Can I show it?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Thoughts on Carla Turner? She was an early researcher who passed away pretty soon after she went public. She wrote, I think, 3 books, Taken and Masquerade of Angels. I think she did some great research. It's clear to me that a good number of the cases she had were absolutely my labs. She said as much. She took a pretty negative viewpoint towards the ETs. But I saw a quote from her recently. I'm like, yes. I knew. She said, if they were truly here to take over, they would have done so by now. So, yeah, she focused a lot on some of the, you know, more controversial and scary aspects of some encounters. But I think she was a good enough researcher to recognize, no, they're not here to take over.
Right.
But
Alfred made a point too. He says, I don't want to believe, I want to know. I mean, we all want to know. We all want to know, instead of being jerked around and treated like children and not being told the truth. And that's my frustration with the government, and everyone's frustration, really. I'm sure yours too, that, you know, they're not giving us the whole truth. But that's where, you know, books like yours come in with wonderful stories, and a lot of where we can use our imagination, our vivid imagination, and kind of live through a lot of what people have experienced, right, Preston? I mean, you know, that's one of the reasons I love reading your books too, because I kind of put myself out there and think, you know, and try to visualize the whole experience.
Well, I work really hard to present cases factually in a non-sensational way, objectively, not pushing a narrative. Because if you look at the books out there, you'll see a good number of them like, well, ETs are demonic, and they, you know, flavor these stories, and they're cherry picking. You know, I don't do that. And this whole Not From Here series is all about bringing cases that show obvious patterns, where you can pull up enough cases to show an absolute pattern in some of these, in this phenomena, for lack of a better word. But yeah, most of the books out there are not that good. I don't mean to be, negative, but that's the truth. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just the God's honest truth. A lot is very speculative. A lot of people are pushing a narrative. A lot of people aren't doing their research. It's poorly sourced, and
Yeah.
now I'm glad to see this subject is really popular, and we've got hundreds of books coming out per year. But if you look at, what's doing well in terms of, what's in the top 100 on Amazon, you'll see that these are often books that do good research. I mean, there's one book by Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper, which I had a copy of that, disappeared out of my house one day, and I don't lend out my books anymore because I don't get them back unless I absolutely trust this person. Dolly, I ended up getting me another copy, so I have it. That book was published so long ago. It's got kind of an odd cover, and I don't even think his name is on the front cover. But it's still doing really well, because if you read that book, he was the first to really lay out this conspiracy of, in some of the information in the book, I'm like, I don't know, but it's worth reading because he lays it out.
Like, you can read anything and find, things that are believable to you and things that are not. So, and that's what discernment's all about. And that's, like, I think it's an obligation for us to do that. We can't just believe everything blindly either. I mean, yesterday or the day before, when I was on Michelle's podcast, we were talking about the Book of Ebens. Now, a lot of people think that's hogwash.
I heard.
So, do I believe it? I don't know. And the Howl, and did a video.
I read the book. It was gripping. Yeah. Do I believe it?
That's what I said. Right. But you have to talk about these things.
Yeah.
If you don't at least put them out there into the ether and have the conversation, what good is it? And the whole point of, like, podcasts like this is to talk about the things that seem a little suspect and things that don't, and that's one of the reasons why I love your stories too, because they're so believable.
I try to get cases that are at least vetted to some extent.
Exactly.
And let's face it, belief has no effect on the truth. You might believe it, you might not. It's not going to change the truth one way or the other. And I do think what you said earlier, what's one of the people in chat said, there's a difference between belief and knowing.
Exactly.
When I first entered this field, and I was listening to family and friends and coworkers, I believed them because I knew they weren't lying. Did I know that they had these experiences? Not really. How could I? Because I was not there.
Right.
I didn't know UFOs were real until I saw one, and another, and another, and then eventually, saw an ET and so forth. Then I know, and that's what we really need to experiences.
Do. Right. Exactly.
The only pathway to true knowledge is experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. How do you think your perspective evolved between Volume 1 and Volume 5? Has it?
That's a good question. I would say that, it has evolved, because I think that there's a misconception that, the UFO phenomena is really all about people being taken on board and physically examined and put back. It is so much more than that. There are layers and layers and layers to what's going on here. And I'm continually surprised. That's why I'm putting out these books. And I thought Volume 5 was going to be the last. It's not. I'm putting together Volume 6.
Oh, are you? Because I think you mentioned it in Volume 5 that was the end, right?
Yeah, I'm like, I'm done for now. No, because I keep finding these interesting new patterns.
Yeah.
And it's shocking to me. Like, one of the early volumes was Phone Call from an Alien. I think that's in the first volume. And that sounds so ridiculous to me when I first heard that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Phone call from an alien. But I interviewed this guy from upstate New York who's like, you're not going to believe me, but I got a call while I was driving on my cell phone, and it made a tone it couldn't make. And it said no such number. It was acting really peculiar, and he kept ignoring it, but it kept ringing. So he picks it up, and this very high-pitched voice says, "The time has come. You will meet us soon."
Oh.
And that night, he had his first fully conscious onboard encounter. He had a lot of missing time. This poor guy.
No way.
Yeah, he had a difficult time with it. And when he told me this, I'm like, oh my God, a phone? Are you kidding me? And I instantly thought, well, wait a second. Whitley Strieber talked about how an ET talked through his stereo once. And I'm like, wait, didn't Bud Hopkins talk about this? Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Debbie Jordan Cobble, Kathy Jordan, in his book Intruders, would get phone calls during her pregnancy, and it would be this ET talking. And I started collecting cases because Raymond Fowler, Betty Andreasen, same darn thing. So I scanned the literature, and this is what's so fun, and this was what's so surprising to me. I'm like, this is crazy. This is a pattern of UFO activity and contact that nobody has even thought about or considered.
Yeah.
At least it has. I should say it hasn't been studied or analyzed or brought together. So I collected about, I don't know, a dozen cases, and that was a chapter of one of the books.
Yeah.
And another one, UFOs over graveyards.
Yeah.
Never thought about this until I read Bob Teet's book. He's a reporter, West Virginia UFOs. And he talks about Dean Memorial Cemetery and Nethkin Cemetery, where UFOs were showing up right after someone had been buried.
Wow.
And it was happening so often that it was attracting UFO stakeouts. People were going there like, okay, they put a new body in. Let's see if the UFOs show up. And they did.
No kidding.
But oh my God, J. Allen Hynek has a case where these two guys, or I should say a couple, were driving near their home in Massachusetts to look at the freshly fallen snow. And they go by this graveyard, and it's completely covered in fog. And they see a UFO hovering over it. So he stops the car and gets out and waves or raises his arm, and boom, he's paralyzed. Can't move. His arm is pinned to the car. This craft raises up and darts off. And now, of course, he can move. I thought, oh, gosh, there's the Lorenzens, Jim and Cora Lorenzen have a case like this too. And I had to dig that one up because I just vaguely remembered it. But yeah, this kid comes running into the funeral home where his mom works. I said, Mom, there's a UFO outside. She's like, shut up. What are you talking about? You're crazy. Until she goes out a couple of days later and sees it herself. And it's case after case after case of this.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So I there's like 20 cases I found when I started. Wow. That's another weird pattern. You would just never in a million years think this is a thing. And this is how my belief in this subject has evolved. I'm like, it's stranger than you can imagine. And there's all different levels of contact. So yeah, I keep finding new patterns, and it's, when I did Schoolyard UFO Encounters, that book, that was going to be a chapter in one of these books. I thought, well, I know of 10 cases. I found 100. Wow. So I'm like, well, I'm going to, instead of a chapter, I'm going to do a whole book on Schoolyard.
Yeah. What's that very famous, I forget the name, I think it was in Africa, where the school children saw a craft and they all described like the same thing, and the entities came out of the craft and then, but what yeah. I mean, that was
November 1994, Ariel Elementary School in Rua, Zimbabwe.
Right.
Yeah, a fantastic case. And, I heard about that a while back and thought it was a one-off. I'm like, this is not, I'm like, wait, Westall High School, Melbourne, Australia, 1966. Crestview Elementary, Opelika, Florida, 1967. But wait, Hillsdale College in Michigan, 1966, 2 weeks before the Westall case. And so this is why it's so much fun to have access to a large database. When I started, there wasn't an internet. It was much harder to I was going to the library
Oh
and,
yeah, it's
and,
all
and
legwork.
buying books. And
Yeah. You do you know of Michael Carter? Have you interviewed him?
yeah, I
Yeah,
love Michael Carter.
he's awesome. I had him on, and he told us a story about he had a blood clot. I'll give you the short version. He had a blood clot in his leg, and he's an ET contactee as well his whole life. And he went to doctors and couldn't get it resolved. And one day he was out and about walking, and this like 7 foot tall person approached him,
Yeah.
and they had a brief conversation. And this person emitted like a light into them and told them that he would be healed. And that night, his blood clot completely disappeared. When he went to the doctors were dumbfounded. They couldn't understand how such a thing happened. And he was just walking through the streets of like whatever city he was in. I mean, these things can happen anywhere and everywhere.
Oh yeah. You know, my book on healings has 300 cases. You could easily double that now.
I love that book.
Easily. I
Yeah.
found other cases of people who were healed of blood clots too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
See?
Michael Carter is amazing. And I'm like, please, can I interview you about this?
Did you interview him yet? You did, right?
Yeah, for that
Yeah,
book. I sure did.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's such a wise soul too. You could talk to him for hours about stuff. In your book, you talk about UFO swarms, right?
Yep.
That they're rare, but they have a lot to teach us. So what are some of the key lessons and insights that you've gleaned from studying like these mass sightings?
Yeah. Well, first, let me just say, what I'm talking about here is, when someone sees a UFO, more than likely there's another one up there. That took me a while to understand. Like, when someone sees a UFO, there's almost always a second one or even a third there. And I thought, well, that's an interesting pattern that I wasn't even fully aware of. And there's a huge number of cases involving 5 or 10 objects, even 20. But above that, very, very few cases. There are some, and over 50, you can count them on a couple of hands. And that's what I started looking at. I'm like, these massive super fleets. I don't know what else to call them.
Yeah.
Because I had my own case in Topanga Canyon when I investigated the Topanga Canyon wave of 1992. There was hundreds of objects being seen on one night. I remember I went up and interviewed the couple who, I interviewed a bunch of people who were seeing UFOs on that night, but found a friend of a friend, a family friend, knew this couple who lived high on the ridge, and said that on that night, June 14th, they kept seeing flashes of light outside their home, and went outside and saw 10 objects come out from behind a ridge. And more flashes of light came out again, saw about 10 or 20 objects. What happened the third time, she started counting them, the wife. And this went on for 2 hours until finally they became so traumatized, they closed the curtains. They went to bed. They were trying to watch a movie. Needless to say, they couldn't watch the movie. Called the police the next morning. Did anyone see UFOs? The police said, no one called us. That was a lie. Demonstrable lie.
Yeah.
So, and I slammed the police because of that. And I feel a little bad now, but I went pretty hard on them. But they lied. That's your own fault. Don't lie. Don't lie to the witnesses. Don't lie to me. At any rate, shouldn't be lying to anybody.
Are they instructed to do that, do you think?
I have to think that possibly yes. I don't have any evidence of that, but why would you?
Right.
It makes no sense. I understand that certain things you don't want to talk about because, it affects an investigation, but they're not even really investigating it.
Right.
So what's the problem here? Are you here to serve the community or not? At any rate, I'm getting off track. So they saw like 200. I went up to her and I'm interviewing them and I'm like, well, how many did you see? And she gave me this look like he's never going to believe me if I tell him this. She says, well, I saw 200. And the husband turns and looks at her and he says, well, I don't know, honey. It might have been closer to 100. and stupid me, I burst out laughing because to me, 100 or 200, who cares? That's still way too many. And then he looked at me, he's like, no, she's probably right. She was counting, I wasn't. And I'm like, God, this is a massive number of objects. How is there anything like this in the literature? Because I could only think of one other case offhand, and that was the Farmington wave, which was, let's see, March 17, 1950. Farmington, New Mexico, tiny little town, 3,000 people. Well, 5,000 if you go out more. And on that day, twice that day, over 50, 100, 200 objects showed up, putting on an absolute obvious display. They wanted to be seen. There's just no two ways about it. And this went on for like an hour. The mayor saw it, the police officers, all the children in school. People went running out of their homes, out of their business. Traffic stopped in the street. It got national headlines. The Air Force lost their mind, tried to cover it up, went over there, threatened witnesses. I mean, it was a big to-do. I don't know why there isn't a full-length book on this case, because there should be.
Yeah.
And it kind of slipped into UFO obscurity.
How is that not front page news? Like, how is an event like
It was, but yeah, it's because of this cover-up is so effective. And I'm like, wow, that's a freaking amazing event. And that's when I decided, you know what? I'm going to scour the literature, see if I can find any more, because there's two right there. And I spent so much time looking, because it's very hard to look up cases like that. You just happen to run across it, and that's how you find it. And
now, what year was that? What year was that?
That was 1950.
So there's no way anybody could say drones, because there was no such
right. So 1947 is a watershed year for the UFO phenomenon, because that was Roswell, that was Kenneth Arnold. There was a huge super wave that was absolutely unprecedented in all of human history. Never happened before, as far as we can tell, in terms of UFOs showing up and staying all summer.
Yeah.
And just being seen everywhere. And really, activity continued from that point on at a highly escalated rate. I found a case which was February 20th, 1947, really before this wave actually broke, which was this, June, July. And this was in Syracuse, New York. This is such an interesting case. These two college students were at the university in Syracuse University, and the astronomer comes running out of the building and says, "Come here. You have to tell me I'm not crazy. You need to see this." This is late at night. Leads them to the university telescope and says, "Just watch. Watch for a full minute before you say anything. Just look." And the guy who reported this case says he looked through the telescope and saw a little disc. This is invisible to the naked eye. And it was going across the field of the telescope, and then it was followed by another, and then another, and then another. And this went on and on and on and on. He counted over 100 objects.
Wow.
And so did his friend. And the astronomer is like, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" And they're like, "Yeah, what are those?" He says, "I don't know. They're craft." And this was right before a huge superwave struck. So they were clearly coming in large numbers before they were even showing themselves. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. And I found like a dozen cases. I've since found a few more where people just happen to be in an area where a bunch of craft show up. And here's my takeaway from this. One is that these craft are out there in much larger numbers than we have any idea of. And
maybe they cloaked themselves intentionally. I mean, and we're just not seeing it.
Well, to some extent, UFOs aren't in your face. They're not super blatant and brazen and there every day. You can't just go outside and like, "I'm going to see a UFO today." But when they want to, they will put on a display. And that's another kind of takeaway from this, is like, this is a type of UFO activity that makes it undeniable that they are real. And another thing I like about these cases is this can't be military. No way. We might have advanced craft, and we might even have 20 or 30 of them, maybe 40. But are we going to fly 100 of them over over a town? Or
that's beyond the scope of believability right there. Yeah, I agree with you fully. No, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. to anybody that's into this topic at all, that's done some research, that they're out there. I love watching amateur astronomers take video. They're taking video of the moon, and then all of a sudden you see several craft just flying, flying around back and forth, and they're all over the internet. And it's not military. It's definitely, it kind of looks like a Tic Tac kind of vibe. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I love the idea of seeing a swarm like that. That has to be so amazing.
Well, it could happen, because a lot of
So,
contactees,
yeah,
many of them have told me this, like, I have a feeling someday our skies are going to fill with craft.
yeah.
That would be something to see.
Were there any patterns or in your research, like any patterns or like geographic areas where I know New York, upstate New York, I had read has quite a few of them. But in your research, have you discovered any particular pattern before a swarm sighting, or any particular demographics where they happen more frequently, or is it just willy-nilly anywhere?
I tend towards willy-nilly. There are a few little patterns because there are like major flaps or waves of activity. And I did notice a pattern to them is often it's over a smaller town,
Mm,
like Whitfield, Virginia. Topanga
hmm.
Canyon, 8,000 residents. It's right next to LA. Hudson Valley is right next to New York. But you know what? Hudson Valley itself is not populated like New York. There are certain areas that seem to be a little bit more active.
Yeah, like Hudson Valley, definitely. They have a lot of sightings over there.
San
And
Luis Valley in Colorado,
yeah,
very active. But
yeah.
here's the thing, because some researchers have talked about this. One publicized sighting can encourage another person to come forward, or two or three. And those three people come forward, and then you have 10 people coming forward. And those 10 people come forward and inspire 100 people to come forward. And suddenly you have a UFO flap that's been there the whole time. So some researchers say a UFO flap is more a matter of sociology, a
Mm,
social pattern. I don't buy it, because if that were true, you would have them everywhere.
right. True.
So maybe to some extent that's true, but I think that there are certainly some areas that seem to be more active.
Yeah,
And
I'm
like
itching to go take a ride up.
Bridge or Falkirk Triangle up in Scotland, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, the Warminster Mystery in England, they had a huge flap there that was just off the charts crazy.
Mhm.
So there, and speaking of the Rua, Zimbabwe case, that was not a one-off. At that time, there was a huge wave going on. People all over that area were seeing stuff.
Oh, is that right? Well, that makes
Yes,
it even more believable. Yet they gave them
exactly.
such a hard time, saying they had mass hallucinations or something. It was ridiculous what they put the kids through. And yet the children's stories were so consistent. Like,
Yeah. And it's funny in these schoolyard cases, people are like, well, they're children. I'm like, well, hold on a second here. Over half the cases, teachers are seeing them too. And teachers are perhaps a little more educated than the average person. But even in the Rua, Zimbabwe case, the teacher finally came forward. She's like, yeah, I had contact. I was there. I saw it. Same with the Broadhaven. They thought it was just these 15 kids, 8 kids. Nope. At least 2 or 3 school employees also saw it. And absolutely, they saw it at Westall and at Crestview. So,
yeah,
this is the problem. The vast majority of people don't come forward. The vast majority, 9 out
yeah,
of 10. I've always asked people when I interview them, and this is how I know this, and you can ask any other researcher who's
mhm,
worth their salt. I asked them, did you call the police? Oh, no, I didn't call the police. Did you call the Air Force? No.
yeah,
Did you call MUFON? What's MUFON?
yeah. That's
So
part of
I get these cases through a sort of a grapevine of friends, or perhaps they're looking for someone to report their case to. And like, finally, someone will talk to me about this.
it. Yeah, yeah.
But
Don't you have
almost
a
nobody.
hotline now? You have a hotline, right, Preston?
Yeah, it's kind of in the air right now because I'm not only so busy, the response, and I haven't publicized it.
Yeah.
I wanted to see how it would go. I haven't completely nixed the idea, but yeah, I do have a hotline. It's on my website. and I just haven't had time to deal with it. So my apologies to those who have called it. I've had a few calls, but I really want people to have a resource, a
Mm,
place they can go to, that they can, perhaps feel like it might be legitimate, because you can report your case to MUFON, and I encourage you, but that's probably where it's going to end. A lot of people have told me, well, I reported my case to MUFON, and I never heard back from them.
yeah.
And some, this happened to Dolly. She reported it to MUFON. They erased it.
What?
So she reported again, erased
Goodness.
it again. And I know,
What?
mind you, I support MUFON. I don't want to get in trouble.
I know. Do you think they're just overwhelmed? Is that the story? They could just be overwhelmed and they can't handle all the calls. I mean,
Oh, for 100%, they're overwhelmed.
yeah.
Yeah. But every single citizen UFO group has had problems with government folks. Every one of them. NICAP basically failed because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And APRO, they caught the CIA red-handed. One of the people they had hired as a researcher turned out to be a CIA agent, and had
Oh,
typed up a letter on one of their company typewriters. Well, he had a template under it, and they found the blank piece of paper, but they were able to rub a pencil against it.
way.
Like, oh my God, this guy is not trustworthy. And they had other, reasons to believe, because all of them were being visited by, it's a long story, but
Yeah.
yeah, they were absolutely under surveillance by the government. And they found that out. Jim Lorenzen found that out because he was connected to government. And he had someone approach him and said, you've got a file on you. It's like, what, really? So this is what we're dealing with here. And so I have sympathies for MUFON, because
Yeah.
absolutely we're all being observed and infiltrated to some degree. This
Oh,
cover-up's no joke. It's not a
yeah, I
joke.
think so too. A lot of the voices are being silenced intentionally and have been for decades. So, yeah. And now there's so much of it that I don't know if they can silence it all. Like, who knows? But
They can try.
try. Absolutely, they can try. I also wanted to talk to you about what's called CE5 events, calling down a UFO. That topic absolutely has me obsessed. I'm always like asking folks when I talk to them their experiences, like even for orb sightings, it's blowing my mind. We all know Chris Bledsoe with his orbs. So this is a two-part question. The first, well, let's cover Chris first. What do you make of his orb sightings? What do you think the intention is there? Because he can go out on any given night or day and summons an orb or a craft.
Yeah.
So with his ability to do that, and he even has like parties on the beach where he has a limited amount of people, and he'll call an orb and take video of it, and you could see them on his Instagram, and they're all beautiful. They're all, I could sit there and watch them forever. What do you think of the whole orb phenomenon first? Like, let's touch upon that.
Yeah. Well, I'll start by saying I met Chris Bledsoe at a convention, and
Oh,
before he really hit the big times.
yeah.
He was already getting pretty well known,
Yeah.
but was not known for his orbs at this point. And what a kind man.
Yeah.
Clearly honest. He's
Genuine.
very sincere, a
Yes.
genuine fellow, and I adore him. Now, as far as his orbs, let's face it, we don't know what they are. He may know. Until one comes down and you can study it in a laboratory setting, we don't know what this is.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And I am concerned because our government is so neck deep in this. He's he's being watched and followed and studied by the government. He's admitted this as much. So I am concerned that some of this might not be ET. I don't know. I don't even really want to go down that avenue, but I'm just raising that possibility. I've seen an orb myself that came down. I had missing time. I think it was ET.
When was this, Preston?
This was in 1990. Oh gosh, 92.
Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah, July. I was right in the middle of investigating this whole wave of sightings in Topanga Canyon, and one came down right in front of my car, right in front of the windshield. I mean, as far
about that. Yeah.
So this does happen, and I do think, a good number of these are ET. Of course, spirits can appear as orbs as well. Now, CE5s do work. This is something that's been going on long before Stephen Greer popularized it. He did tremendous work with that.
Doesn't he have that Skywalker project going on where they're intentionally using psionics to interact? Yeah, that's a whole nother.
Yeah, don't get me. Okay, you got me started. Too late. No.
Yeah.
You cannot. This is the disinformation coming in. I don't buy it. Sorry that you can fool ET into thinking we're ET and call them down using psionic. No, right. I don't think that that's what's going on. The whole CE5 movement is based on consciousness and meditation and telepathically reaching out to ETs, and done correctly with a good heart. Yes,
I'm not here.
They will come down. Now I want to preface this. This is back in the day, right?
Right.
One of the first to really do this was Sisto Paz Wells.
Mm-hmm.
They would bring people out. The media called down UFOs, and they would show up. In 1992, I joined CSETI with Stephen Greer. He came to LA, and we went out, and sure enough, we had a sighting that first night. Second night, we had a sighting.
Wow.
We had a little core group of 10 people or so, and every 3 months or so, we would have 2 or 3 sightings a year after going out, every other month. Now, I recently put out a book, Humanoids and High Strangeness, and one of the guys in it said, you need to put this in my chapter, because I sent everyone their chapter. And he says, our government is flying stuff around. ETs have warned me about this. He's in telepathic contact. He says, you need to tell people who are doing CE5s that they don't know what they're calling down. It's government. He says it can be dangerous. You're calling down what you think is ET, and it's not. And Dolly has been very clear that ETs are not here right now.
Right.
So perhaps they can appear as an orb, but this is why I'm very cautious. The whole New Jersey wave, I don't buy that as ET for 1 second.
So you don't think, even though ETs are not here, you don't think they could do like portal jumping? Maybe, maybe some ETs can get here. I don't know. Like, how does that? What is Dolly? We should have had Dolly answer that question, but I'm sure you would know. How does that work, Preston? How does that work?
I don't think that the idea of portals is entirely correct. So yeah, they could. People, this is a very complicated issue, and it's not easy to answer. But people are still in telepathic contact. ET can remote view you, perhaps, and you might even see an orb or even an ET, but it's not physically there.
So is it like a hologram or just a projected image from them?
I wouldn't call it a hologram.
Yeah.
No,
it's not a hologram.
No, I don't think there's a device creating light. That's our governments can do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is why I'm concerned about what might be going on with Chris Bledsoe. I don't know. I haven't been there. I haven't been to his watch parties, so I really don't even want to go there. But I'm concerned about it. Now, I will say,
I am too. It's a whole phenomenon. It's like a huge phenomenon that's got, and then like I'll interview some people that are have their like PhD in demonic studies, and they say, and again, I'm just repeating some things that people believe, not that I do. They say some of these orbs can be of demonic nature. Who knows? It's so difficult to kind of sludge through what's the truth and what isn't, or what you want to believe and what
Yeah.
you don't.
Well, I put a chapter in the book, Not From Here, Volume 5, on CE5s, because I had a very early case of it with a gentleman by the name of Arnie Weiler, who was a set director for NBC and was involved in an event at the La Brea Tar Pits, the George Page Museum in Santa Monica, where he worked with a special effects guy, and they were setting up a peacock's tail with computerized lights. They turned it on. It's like a half disc, right? Almost a 3/4 disc. And two or three, I think it was three actually, UFOs came swooping down as if to investigate. And so Arnie Weiler turns to the special effects guy, Rick Liebert, says, "Look, those look like UFOs." And Rick Liebert looks at him and goes, Pshaw, that happens every time I do this. Or, that always happens. And so he's telling me this story. I'm like, oh my God, this was my dad's friend, Arnie Weiler. And so they called down UFOs using lights, not meditation, just lights. I'm like, I need to talk to this Rick Liebert guy. Can you get me in touch with him? He's like, sure.
Yeah.
Turned out he's a pretty heavy duty guy. He's since passed away, but he was part of a major radio station and did fireworks and laser shows across the country, was in touch with a lot of major musicians. So I had no idea. I'm like, wow, this guy's a big deal. I'm a pretty young researcher at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So I call him up and I'm like, I talked to Arnie Weiler. Can you confirm this incident in Santa Monica? He's like, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, these lights came down. He described the same thing. I'm like, well, Arnie said that you told him this happens often. He says, yeah, it's happened a number of times. I'm like, well, can you explain any? And he's like, well, one comes to mind, one that was really vivid. This was in 1978, he said. He was doing a stunt for a radio station in San Diego. They went on top of what was then the tallest building in San Diego, a bank building, and set up a 22-watt green argon laser at the top of the building, which would play and beat to Pink Floyd and rock music.
Oh, yeah.
And they got FAA permission and the whole deal. Turned this thing on, and he said within 5 minutes, a large V-shaped object came right over the building. Couldn't have been more than 50 feet high. He says, I can't tell you how high or how big because I don't know how big this thing was, but it was huge. It had little lights on each side of the V. And he said there was another one way up higher there. So there was two of them, and off it went. So I'm like, wow, I'm going to write an article about this for UFO Universe magazine, which I did. And then I'm like, Stephen Greer comes to town, right? And I'm like, well, I can't afford his lecture. It's $300. Who can pay that kind of money?
Right.
And the newspaper calls me up and says, I don't know why we're doing this. I feel compelled to pay your way, and if you will write an article for the newspaper. And he said at least 5 times, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm like, I don't know either, but let's go. So I go to the lecture, and I ended up writing an article for the newspaper about it called Making Friends with UFOs. But at any rate, I'm listening to Stephen Greer, and he's like, so here's how you call down UFOs. I've got the Contact trilogy. You meditate, you use sounds, and you visualize, and you can use lights too. And here's the best example I could find. It's a case from Preston Dennett. I'm like, whoa, nearly fell off my chair.
No way.
And I'm like, well, how cool is that? That is just so cool. And then he's like, and here's another really good example, also from Preston Dennett. I'm like, yay, dude, this is cool. And I got to know him fairly well, and he's a genuine contactee. Like, I mean, I'm not going to endorse him or not endorse him because we've all got our own thoughts about Stephen Greer, but I can tell you, I was there when a UFO showed up. So and he was always been very nice to me. And I'm driving, because we were looking for a place to call down UFOs, and I'm driving him around. He's like, I need to thank you, Preston, because I saw that article in UFO Universe, and I got a telepathic message from the ETs. Now is the time. And which meant to form C-SETI. So that's kind of my C-SETI, Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind origin story. So I got to play I had a little piece of the pie there, which is so cool because we all play a role, every darn one of us.
Yeah.
But what I do love about CE5s is it offers an opportunity to study this phenomena firsthand, or it did. Right now, I would caution against doing it because you
Yeah.
don't know what you're calling down.
Yeah.
But also, it has such great potential. Yeah, you can call an orb down, but what about an ET or a craft? That's a whole different story. So that's
Yeah,
why I'm a little bit
here. If they're not here, because I saw Dolly in the chat mentioned, and I kind of scribbled his name down, Michael Schratz, yeah. So they're not here, right? But who are they calling down then?
exactly. Who are they calling down? And if you look at the research of Michael Schratt, and I am so glad I met this guy because it's becoming more and more apparent to me that what we're labeling as a genuine UFO is not nearly as, common as we thought currently, especially. But throughout history, historically speaking, a good number of what people thought were genuine UFOs were not.
Right.
We've had this technology since the 50s.
Right.
It looks like that's a long time. So I've really had to take a second look at all these historical cases. Now, if a UFO lands and little guys come out and you're taken on board, that's ET. But if these things are coming down and sending a beam down and frying you, like the Colares incident in Brazil is often pointed to as an example of ET hostility. I don't know that that's ET, Carol Ann. I think that might be a pre-runner of the false flag.
Yeah.
I'm not the first to say this.
Yeah, it sounds like government technology or something. Who knows?
So yeah,
look what they did with the Havana syndrome. You
right?
know,
Good example.
who knows what they're capable of doing?
Now, a lot of these craft that are government, you can kind of tell sometimes they're matte black, they're riveted, they're pockmarked. A true UFO. Look at the Travis Walton case, and you read the descriptions. It was breathtakingly beautiful. Almost, people will say, "Oh my God, there was not a seam on it, not a rivet. It shined like a mirror."
Right.
This is how you can tell a genuine UFO.
Oh, I believe there's
UFOs kind of waver also in the sky. They go. There's little clues here and there that as researchers you start to pick up on.
Absolutely. You know what's interesting that I read about, because I was obsessed with their story at one point too, that when the police officer was interrogating them and left the room, and this is back in the day, mind you, they had a microphone or a tape recorder.
Oh yeah, the Hickson Parker case. Yeah.
Underneath the table. So there was a whole conversation taking place about what these two gentlemen experienced. And they had no idea they were being monitored. So they could have had an opportunity to like get their story straight and cover up the lie.
We pulled a fast one on them, didn't we? Not what they said.
Yeah. So, that made it more believable. Yeah. Yeah.
Calvin Parker was in tears. He's like, "What are we going to do? How they'll never believe us." And the guy's like, "Well, this happened. You can actually listen to this tape online. You can find it. And it's harrowing to hear them because it really gives you a sense of how profoundly an encounter like that can affect a person."
Oh, God, yeah.
And yeah, absolutely a genuine case. And the research
it is. Absolutely. Yeah.
That Philip Mantle has done. If you get a chance to get Philip Mantle on your show, do it. Oh my goodness. He's put out, Flying Disc Press. He put out a book with Dr. Irina Scott on the Pascagoula case. He's got a lot to say about it. There were other witnesses who saw it taking place. It's astonishing.
Oh, I'll bet.
It's really, really amazing.
I noticed there's some type of thing between like amateur astronomers and professional ones capturing footage and like the level of believability, I guess, between like from the amateur astronomer society or group of folks. What's going on with that? Like, why is that any less believable than a professional astronomer when they capture footage.
Yeah, well, that's what's really interesting about all of this, because the first go-to people are going to say is, well, like they're misperceiving.
Right.
Like, well, wait a second here. Astronomers, if you can't believe in an astronomer, who can you believe?
Mm-hmm.
Pilots, astronomers make excellent witnesses, because
Oh,
pilots are, people who are in the military trained in aircraft identification. And there's I put this in the book, so I'm glad you brought it up, a chapter on astronomers who've seen UFOs.
mm-hmm.
Because there's this misconception like, well, I couldn't believe this guy was posting all over Facebook. It's one of the reasons I put this in. He's like, where are all these astronomers who have seen UFOs?
Right.
Like, what is wrong with you? There is a list out there of some 300 astronomers, and many of them, are amateur astronomers.
Yeah.
But some are not amateurs. And like Clyde Tombaugh, who discovered Pluto, worldwide fame. He's a really good astronomer. He's world famous. Had a UFO encounter in 1949 over, I think it was New Mexico, with his family. And it was an object, had little portholes on it, the whole deal. Such a genuine witness.
Yeah.
It's funny, I posted on Reddit, on the astronomy section, a list of astronomers who'd seen UFOs. They took that post off so fast.
No way.
And I got downvoted like you wouldn't believe.
What?
Like, this is bullcrap. I'm like, you guys call yourself astronomers? I listed 12 prominent astronomers. There was another guy, oh my God, Frank Halstead. Such a good astronomer, very well respected, was on a train in Death Valley in 1954 with his wife, and his wife's like, honey, what's that? This is a daylight sighting.
Yeah.
There was this huge blimp-shaped object and another saucer-shaped, and they were going along with the train, darting around, moving circles, right angles, hovering. And Frank Halstead went public, God bless him. And he said, it's time that we take this subject seriously. Those who are poo-pooing flying saucers don't know what they're talking about. I had a sighting myself, and he fought for the UFO subject for years and could not get any headway. Jalen Hynek, he's an astronomer. He had a sighting himself.
Yeah, Hynek did. Yep.
And I read about gave a talk before a group of astronomers and did a little survey and found out that a bunch of them had seen sightings and not one of them had gone public with it. Not one.
I know I've been hearing a lot of pilot stories. And like you said, if you can't believe a pilot or an astronomer, they're or anybody in the military, the police, they're like more believable. I mean, they shouldn't be, but they are, like I would say, more believable when they come out with their stories. But my question to you is this, and I think a lot of people are wondering this, so it begs to be asked. If we're having all of these encounters, experiences, videos, pilots, astronomers, everybody saying that they're seeing craft and that ET is not here, what in God's name are we seeing?
Government.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's Dolly talks about this, but she's not the only one. I'm in contact with a lot of contactees. I've had 3 or 4 of them. Like, I haven't had any encounters in the past 3 or 4 years. I'm like, oh, wasn't that interesting? Talk to Cheryl Costa. She's very well connected. She's in touch with some Tibetan yogis who are super advanced. She's a really advanced spiritually. And she asked them about it, and they're like, no, they're not here right now. And I talked to, who's the other guy? James Goodall. Jim Goodall?
Oh, Goodall, yeah.
Yeah, he talks about this as well.
So these are government crafts that we're seeing. It could be from our country or other countries. Like, who knows? Well,
when it gets to this subject, I think the major superpowers are working together behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I really do, because it's not government necessarily affiliated. It's the power elite. It's the cabal. who's
Yeah, I believe that.
working on this. That's the very highest levels of the military, certainly. The Pentagon, those folks know what's going on. But let's face it, during the New Jersey wave, as an example, because I got pushback on this. Like, how can you say this is not ET? Some of these orbs are huge. I'm like, well, look up drones. You need to look up drones and see how big and fast they can go in the public arena.
Exactly. Some of them are sizes of a bus.
Yeah. And this is what's publicly known. We all know, anyone who's studied the military knows that they have technology that's 50, 100 years in advance of what is in the public arena. Now, here's the thing about the New Jersey wave. Are there any reports of people being taken on board? Nope.
No.
Conspicuously absent. Are there any people reporting ETs? No. I can tell you in the Topanga Canyon wave, there sure were. The Hudson Valley wave, oh yeah. Gulf Breeze, you bet. The San Luis Valley in Colorado, all these places have plenty of humanoid reports.
Yeah.
The humanoid reports have dropped.
Yeah. Is there an ETA? Is there an ETA for their expected coming back? Like, is there any? Does Dolly know, or did she hear anything about? Are they supposed to come back again soon, or is it just crickets?
Well, you'll have to talk to Dolly about that, but here's my understanding is that we're in a situation now, and this is not only coming from just Dolly, because I love getting confirmation, right?
Of
But
course.
you can absolutely see the science on this in terms of the instability of our magnetic fields on our planet and the solar cycle we're going through right now. So that's what we're dealing with. This is why ETs are not here now. And we're looking, go to Space Observers, I think it's called, Ben Davidson.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, we're looking at an upcoming coronal mass ejection.
I heard about that. Dolly has talked about. I gotta have Dolly back on. I have a lot of questions.
She can talk about this with a lot more authority and knowledge than I can, because
I gotta.
Understand it could happen. Yeah, it could happen tomorrow. It could happen a year from now.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be 5 years. She says there's no way it'll be 5 years. But I'm of the mind that it's a geological event. You know how an earthquake is overdue in LA and it still hasn't happened yet? Yeah. It's going to happen. We know it's going to happen. Is it going to happen tomorrow or 5 years from now? I don't know. Right. A geological event is extraordinarily hard to predict.
Yeah, look at you.
They're like, we're out of here. Forget it. We're not risking it. That speaks volumes. So yeah, I think it could happen.
Thing too, Yellowstone event. I've been hearing a lot about, something exploding over in Yellowstone. I don't know. You hear about these things from time to time, but so bottom line is don't be going outside calling ET. It's not like a good thing to do right now.
Well, here's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Like people are like, well, let's hike over to a UFO hotspot and call down ETs. Did you know where the most likely place is to have a humanoid encounter? Your own bedroom.
Right.
So you know what? If you really want to contact these ETs, you can. Your best method of doing it is telepathically, psychically.
Yes.
And if you are able to just quiet your mind and really dive deep into meditation and develop your psychic abilities, remote viewing, call out to ETs, certainly, but you have to also be able to listen. And you can absolutely 100% establish direct contact with ETs now, anytime you want. Are they going to bring their ship down? Probably not.
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, do it. You can do it in your own home. And I realized this a long time ago because people were having encounters over major city centers.
Mm-hmm.
The most likely place to have an encounter is in the suburbs, because that's where most of the people are. I did a survey of every single case I investigated. Over 50% were in the suburbs. The other, it was 25 in very rural areas and 25 in very urban areas. Yeah. You can see UFOs anywhere, at any time. But yeah, if you're reaching out to make contact now, probably your best bet is just doing it in your own home.
Yeah.
And yeah, form a group. That's awesome. Do that. And
Yeah,
if you want to go out in the woods and do it, and perhaps you will have an orb sighting, and perhaps it will be ET. But if I'm warning you, if a craft comes down and it gets real close and something happens, you've been warned. Because this was, boy, the guy I interviewed from Europe's like, you need to tell people this.
yeah,
And it rang a bell with me because Dolly has been saying the same thing. That this is not a good idea right now. And have no doubt about it that our government is up to no good with this subject.
yeah.
And let's face it, you can look into any area and see some real machinations from our own governments. And I don't want to be a doom and gloomer, but I'm just not happy with how what's happening here with society, all the divisiveness and the hatred and the unequal distribution of wealth and the withholding of cures.
Yeah.
So that's a complete other show. That's for the uncensored show that you do with Michelle.
Yes, definitely a topic for that. Maybe we'll have one and we'll pop you and Dolly in. We could have a real in-depth conversation going. You talk in your book about people's like dogs being abducted, and animals, and specifically dogs, like in your book. And that adds like a whole nother layer to like this whole phenomenon. What do you think these cases reveal about the extraterrestrial agenda? And do you especially we've gotten to see so many cow mutilations and all that. Give us a good overview of what's going on with the animals and UFOs.
Yeah. Well, I did a chapter in one of the earlier volumes called Alien Zoos. Because if you survey the literature, you will see that ETs have collected animals of all kinds.
Mm-hmm.
Fish, alligators, birds, all the plants for that matter.
Right.
And, I mean, there was a case that, let me see, I think it was John Mack had a lady who was brought on board and was very confused because she was in a forested area. This was inside a UFO. RD6 Killer Clark has a couple of cases where people were brought on board and there's an arboretum.
Wow.
An absolute nature scene. And at first glance, when I was looking at these cases, I'm like, well, what's going on here? What are they doing with these animals? Well, now I can see that it's more of a protective, it's kind of like a Noah's Ark type deal.
That makes sense.
We know, talk to any zoologist, that we're losing species on a yearly basis. So there's an extinction problem going on.
Yeah.
And ETs are battling that, protecting species. This is one of the reasons I think so many people have genetic material taken from them.
Yeah.
So if there should be an existential crisis, humanity will be just fine. So I think that's largely what's going on here. I wrote this chapter about dogs because I kept running into cases where dogs were involved in an encounter. I thought this might be fun, and it was just an interesting chapter because no one's ever looked at it before.
Right, exactly. Well, don't we have seed storage places placed globally so that we have seeds of all of the plant life on our planet in case of a mass extinction event? So it makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah.
They're doing it.
It was interesting. There was one case that comes to mind. I think this is in Europe somewhere, where a guy was taken on board and they were interested in his dog. They want, we need to examine your dog. They weren't as interested in him. And they asked him, another lady I did interview, her dog was sick with valley fever, a fungal infection.
Oh.
And she was on board once and kind of came to on board and saw her dog with its paws up in the air and two ETs working on it.
Wow.
And she became furious and quickly grabbed some object and went running towards them with intent to kill. And the ET jumped in front of her and said, "Stop, think for 1 second. We are here to help your dog."
Wow.
And she like realized, oh my gosh. And they did. They healed her dog, at least kept him alive for another year or so. He was, or she, I should say, uh, did have some problems, but
Yeah.
at the time she was at a point in her life where the death of her dog would have absolutely devastated her.
Oh,
And they
gave her
healed
some
her.
more time.
And
Yeah.
another really good example is Ray Hernandez, who
Hmm.
really needs no introduction, but for those of you who haven't heard of him, is a contactee, had a major encounter, and now became a pretty prominent figure in the field.
Yeah.
But his encounter involved his little dog, Nina, who was suffering from arthritis and other problems and had to be put down or was going to be put down the next day.
Mhm.
ETs showed up and
Wow.
cured the dog, and it's running around like a little puppy and of course absolutely changed Ray Hernandez's life.
Absolutely.
Uh, and then it got another case of a dog who was cured of arthritis. So yeah, ETs are helping out animals as well.
Yeah, I love that. Do
There's
you
a
ever?
couple of cases where the dog tries to bite the ET.
Oh, is that right?
And, here's one case, if I may, real quick, because it just made me laugh, where this guy from Louisiana was out hunting with his dog Hunterbone and sees a UFO, and yeah, it had landed, and the dog was running up to it, and so he's running up to get his dog. Next thing he knows, he's finding himself on board. He's physically examined. He's talking to the ETs. They're giving him warnings, and he's like, "My dog, where's my dog?" And he sees his dog, and it's floating around, unable to move, like a stuffed animal.
Yeah.
And they're like, "What did you?" He's like, "What did you do to my dog?" And they said, "Well, he tried to bite us. He's just fine."
Oh, that's so
So, yeah, I got a good dozen. Well, it was more like 20 cases of
fun. Wow.
people because they will take you on. Dolly had this, her pet dog. They would allow her to take her dog with her on board.
Yeah.
That happened to a Ukrainian kid. They're like, "We need you to come with us." He's like, "Only if I can take my dog and cat." I said,
Oh,
"That's fine."
yeah, that's nice. That makes me feel warm and fuzzy to hear that. Do you ever have difficulty differentiating, especially with all the investigating you do, decades of it? Do you ever have a difficulty trying to discern? Because I know you're into like the high strangeness aspect of it. Not only are you specialized in ufology, but also in the whole realm of the paranormal or high strangeness. Do you ever find a case or personally difficult trying to differentiate between the two? Like, do you ever find yourself wondering, does this go in this category or does this go in this category?
Occasionally,
Yeah.
it does happen. Absolutely. One case comes to mind. A man from Arizona or Illinois. I'm sorry. A man from Illinois called me, and he's describing haunting activity. And I'm like, well, because he's like wanting to know what's going on. And I'm like, he says doors are opening and closing, and we're hearing footsteps and so forth, right? And I'm like, well, this sounds like a very typical haunting. He's like, well, wait, I'm not finished. He says, there's this UFO hanging over our house at night.
Oh, jeez.
I'm like, what? And and I wasn't able to do a formal interview. He just wanted to talk. He just wanted some clarity. And I'm like, gosh, this is one of these mixed motif cases.
Right.
And occasionally that happens. I talked to these ladies who had a horrific demonic haunting for sure. It was this big dark spirit. They pinned her down on the bed. It tried to get inside her. It was bad smells, objects moving. It was a bad poltergeist haunting, knockings. And they finally got out of there, because it kept trying to possess them, literally
Oh.
go inside them. This was in an apartment in Van Nuys. So they
Mm-hmm.
moved out, found another apartment, and the haunting activity dropped to almost zero. Little things, right? But petered out really quickly. But 2 weeks after they moved, suddenly the whole apartment is filling with this buzzing noise.
Mm.
And they're thinking, oh my gosh, it's back again. This poltergeist, what's going on? And then they're like, no, that's coming from outside. So they run out on the balcony, and there's this giant U-shaped craft with all these lights on it. It's tilting. It's showing itself off clearly to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, Preston, what does this mean? I'm like, are you sure this is a UFO? Like, it wasn't a helicopter, it wasn't a plane, it's not a blimp. This, we couldn't identify it. And I'm like, gosh, they felt certain that it was somehow related to their
Yeah.
ghostly encounters. So this does happen. I had one guy who had a UFO land in his backyard. Next night, Bigfoot showed up. Then he had a poltergeist outbreak. So, it's taken me a while to unpack this. And one case that really kind of laid it out for me was a lady in Mount Rainier, Washington, who had a little silver-suited humanoid come in and was walking around her bed. She couldn't move. She wakes up the next morning. She's laying on top of her covers. So this was good evidence for her, at least, that something happened.
Yeah.
She's like, everyone in the building had to hear this. There was huge bright lights. It was this loud buzzing. Nobody did. She's feeling fluish, goes to work. I've told the story before, so I apologize if any of you have heard it before.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
She goes to work and turns on her computer, and it goes zimp right out. She shorted it out. Called the IT guy and like, can you put on my computer online? Because she couldn't do it. Goes to the copier, turns it on, and shorts that out. And tells the IT guy, like, after you're done with my computer, broke the copier, sorry. Goes to the fax machine and does the same thing. So at this point, it's clearly not coincidence.
Right.
And having talked to a lot of contactees who wear out watches or blow up light bulbs or make radios fuzz up or TVs, or one guy, a Marine, he worked at a welding factory. They brought him into the doctor because he kept shorting this very, very expensive welding machine.
Wow.
So it's something about the bioelectric field. When someone has an encounter and they're telepathically communicating and they're levitating around and they're fully psychically activated. When you're with the ETs, you're on point with them in terms of your psychic abilities.
Sure.
Then you come back. This happened to Irina Scott. Irina Scott had an encounter, came back, and poltergeist activity is breaking out. If she had told me that 20 years earlier, I would have been like, what's going on? Now I understand. Your bioelectric field is activated to a point where stuff happens. You might have mediumship, see shadow people.
Yes.
Telekinesis.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's going on here. And high strangeness, at some point, is going to be just normalness. Because we only call it strangeness because we don't understand it.
No, we don't. We don't. And that's, why we have these continued conversations to try to get some clarity out of the whole thing.
Exactly.
It's brilliant. And I have to ask you, it may seem like a trite question, but if you were to meet an ET tomorrow, what would you ask them? Do you have like a punch list ready to go? Like, what would be the first? And I know you've had an experience where you were on a craft before, but I don't think you talked about that, like a series of questions that you had for them, or maybe you didn't have an opportunity to do that. But have you like thought about that? Like, what would be like the first thing you would ask them?
Do you have a book I can borrow? No, I mean, in all seriousness, I would have a gazillion questions. What can you tell me about our origins? Human origins, because it's become clear to me that the popular mainstream theory of human origins, in terms of us evolved from primates, is probably not correct.
Right.
And because what the contactees have been told is like, no, we actually used to live on Mars. Humans are throughout the universe. We all share a common heritage. We are you, you are us, we are one. I would love some clarity on that.
Yeah.
I'm like, what can you tell me about me? Just very selfishly, I want to know about, my own history, because I've had some unusual events in my life. But I'd love to know how they, everything. There's not one aspect that how did you ever have money in your history?
That's a good one.
You know what I mean? How did you rise above wars?
Because I remember Dolly saying that when she was on craft, that they would think of something and it would like appear. So if they wanted to give her water or whatever, it would just happen with a thought, correct? So maybe there's no need for money. Maybe they can just manifest what they need, like on the spot. I don't know. That's such a good question. Yeah. I would want to know.
No, I wouldn't put it that way. I think that's an oversimplification. They are able to, it's not just manifesting. They have technology that
that brings it into
extremely advanced.
Right. So it's kind of like Star Trek when they had that machine that they could, like, not a teleporter, but what was that machine where they would put their food?
The replicator or something.
And it would just appear, right? That was cool.
But I think their technology is like light technology, advanced to a point that we will never grasp it in this lifetime. There's just no way, because they're not 1,000 years ahead of us, or 100,000. It's far more than that. So we've got a long time before we understand that. But they can do things that, I think this is what's led some people to sort of think, well, are we even dealing with extraterrestrials? Because they say, like, people be taken on board and they see carpet and a sofa and a widescreen TV and a Persian rug. I was looking at a case.
Wow.
I interviewed a lady who's like, I swear it looked like a doctor's office to me. They will do that for you. They can do this easily. I like the analogy Dolly uses. It's like a cuttlefish. It's still a craft. This is not a psychic thing going on that's, purely spiritual. It is and it isn't. But no, this is a technology that they have the ability to use. This is why it's so interesting studying this field. You think you know everything. You finally think you got a grasp on it. Along comes something and you're like, oh my gosh, this is completely new to me.
Yeah.
And if I may, one of my favorite chapters in this Not From Here book is alien books. This blew me away. Absolutely, I couldn't believe it, because we think of books as a human construct.
Sure.
It's something we invented years and centuries ago. Print, and started. The invention of the book accelerated humanity and civilization to an unbelievable degree, because finally we had a way to transfer knowledge from generation to generation in a way that would be unaltered. Well, allegedly. How many versions of the Bible are there? But at any rate, books are a big deal.
Didn't that happen with Gutenberg, though? When was that? Back like in 15?
Yeah. So that's so this is not all that long ago in human history that we started doing printing. And so, we've got books in our society, and it's a big, big deal. That's really helped bring society to where it is today. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of books on board was like, what is going on here? Because I first heard of this with Betty Hill, our lovely Betty and Barney Hill case.
Yeah.
Where she said, can you give me an object? I'd love an alien artifact to prove that this experience happened.
Yeah.
And the guy who is her escort said, sure, why not? Pick anything. And she found this little blue book. She says, can I have this? And he says, well, yeah, but you won't be able to read it. And she's like, well, that's not the point. This is for proof. And she opened it up and looked at a page and saw these symbols, which she later was able to write down. I've got more to say about that. But at any rate, it's a little glassy kind of blue book. And they said, yeah, you can have it. And the experience is over. The door is open. Barney's walking down the ramp. She's at the doorway. And all of a sudden, one of the ETs in charge says, get the book back from her. She can't have it. Mm-hmm. And they're like, we need that book back. I don't know if they use the term book, but we need this back. She's like, what are you talking about? She was furious. She said, you gave this to me. You can't take it back. This is my proof. And they said, well, that's the point.
Yeah.
We can't give you proof. This could be dangerous.
That makes
sense. Us.
Yeah.
And they took it. And I'm like, oh, the world would have been so different if she had that.
Oh my gosh. Could you imagine? Didn't she draw a star map of what galaxy they were from? She had asked them to draw, and she remembered that. And it turned out to be accurate, right?
Right. They didn't say they were from there, but they did give her a star map, which she reproduced, and it turned out to show an actual representation of Zeta Reticuli and other stars,
Right,
which
right.
weren't well known, certainly not by her.
Oh,
But so she has this alien book, and I thought, gosh, that little blue book sounds awfully similar to what Betty Andreasen described, who was given a book and got to keep it at home for 2 weeks, showed it to her daughter. So this is not just one person saying this. And she said she described it in the same way, Carolyn. A blue, shiny book with white, glassy pages and had weird symbols and stuff. And they told her, this is knowledge. This is spiritual knowledge meant for you, no one else. And she tried to recall it under hypnosis and could not do it. Would not come through. But then I ran across some other contactee cases. Richard Boylan had a case involving a gentleman who was shown a book. And they said, you will have no memory of this until you're 35. He was 36 when it all came rushing back to him. Yeah. All this spiritual knowledge. Canadian contactee Jeff Selver, same thing. Gave him a book, said it will come back to you. And it did. Yes. And it's all about spiritual knowledge, the power of love, how to levitate, how to advance your psychic abilities. So I'm collecting these cases. I'm like, these are alien books. This is so cool.
It is.
And mind you, I am working on symmetry at the time, right? Mm-hmm. So I turned to Dolly because she was very, how will I put this, a little bit wary. You know, I was trying to get her story, and it was a little bit like pulling teeth in the beginning because she had trained herself not to talk to people and to keep it silent because no one's believed her anyway. But I'm like writing this book, and this is important information because she had not volunteered this. And so a lot of the time I would, mention something, and she'd like, oh yeah, that did happen. I'm like, I don't suppose you ever were shown in a book, an alien book. What a story. Oh my God. She's like, well, yeah, I did have one. And it had this jeweled, Whitley Strieber, another guy who had this going on. Mm-hmm. It showed the spiritual history of humanity, was the one he saw, a jeweled cover. So wow. Dolly describes it has an emerald surface. It looks metallic. It's not. It's got glowing pages that aren't paper. This is not paper as we would think of it, and can display holograms and has all kinds of aphorisms and spiritual wisdom and scientific knowledge, any subject. And it was a tiny little thin book when she was a kid, but over the years has grown. And she keeps it on the UFO in her little quarters there, mm-hmm. and can refer to it when she's on board. So she's telling me all this. I'm like, well, this is exactly what I'm hearing from other people. This is amazing. And I can go into more detail about that, but this part was so interesting to me. I'm like, did you ever try to take it home with you? Yeah. Or maybe she volunteered this, but at any rate, she's like, well, yeah. One time I thought, I'm just going to take it home. And she didn't get out the door when they took it back, and she got, chastised, reprimanded.
Yeah, I remember her telling us that.
You cannot do that. Why did you do that? You know better. This is a dangerous thing. And if this were to fall into the wrong hands, this could prove dangerous for you, for the person who's handling this, and for us. And they actually kept it from her for like a month to basically, drive home the lesson there.
That's why the Book of Ebens kind of made me wonder, because there you go. It's a book, and it kind of is similar. It projected holographic images the way Linda Moulton Howe described it, and it just reminded me of like a story in your book that I would have heard.
It reminded me too. And I think, I know that the Serpo story, and I ultimately kind of came on the skeptical side, right. Because it's such an outlier in so many ways.
Right, it is.
But the best kind of disinformation has kernels of truth in it.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. You know what I mean? So true. That is so true.
It's dastardly. Oh, I hate them for that.
Tell us about, we have some time. And then I wanted you to maybe check the comments, because in case folks have any
Well,
questions.
I haven't really been looking at them.
No, I'm not either, because I'm so enthralled with talking to you. The twin connection you talk about in your book.
Yes.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about that, because that I found amazing.
Yeah. This kind of came under my radar very early on when I was interviewing someone in the Topanga Canyon wave, actually. Because this lady I interviewed, I call her Sarah. It's not a real name. They desperately wanted anonymity. And of course, that's fine. She was pregnant with twins and had lost one in utero, halfway through the pregnancy. And they told her, this is very bad news because the chances of you carrying this other twin to full term is almost zero. It's like 1 in 5 million, I think they told her.
Ooh.
So you're likely going to lose this baby. And that's when the UFO started landing outside their house. That's when she got pulled on board and was being physically examined. She's like, Preston, they're interested in my pregnancy. I'm like, well, I bet they are. And she did carry the baby to full term. I met the baby. He's a cute little guy. And shortly, he's like 2 years old or something. He's like, Mommy, I'm seeing angles. I'm seeing angles. She's like, angles? What do you mean angles? And then one day he's like, Mommy, they're angels. Yeah. And he says, I know about my brother Michael. And she's like, what? She did not tell him he was a twin or the name.
Yeah.
So
mind-blowing.
I thought, oh my gosh, was this twin taken? And I started thinking about this because I was running into other cases. I interviewed a gentleman, Kevin Kamen. He's a fraternal twin. His twin also got taken. Oh gosh, the Allagash case by Raymond Fowler in Maine. Jim and Jack Wiener were two of the men involved, identical twins. And they said the ETs seemed pretty interested in their fact that they were twins. And I'm still running into cases where some people are taken on board. They see their twin.
Yeah.
And some are like, oh, it's a clone of me. I think it's probably your twin.
Yeah.
And it goes deeper than this because Audrey and Debbie Hewins from Oxford, Maine, other identical twins who've had encounters. There's the Kinsella twins from England. There's quite a few twins in the contactee population. And as I went deeper into this, I started to realize, like Dolly, she's like, did I tell you this? I'm like, what? She says, actually, I'm a twin. I'm like, you're kidding. It's like, no. My mom was pregnant with twins. She showed me the proof of this.
Wow.
The medical proof. And she later met her twin on board. She did not tell me this when we put out Symmetry. So this is going to be covered in Symmetry too.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that when it's coming to fruition.
Yeah, well, hopefully this year. I'm having a difficult time getting, transcribing the interviews because I'm so busy right now.
Yeah.
But I'm working hard on it. But this twin thing is crazy. I interviewed a lady for Humanoids and High Strangeness and brought this up. She's like, I'm so sorry, Preston, I didn't mention, but I'm a twin too.
Wow, that's mind-blowing.
So there's this high incidence of twins. And then here's another thing that makes me wonder, because people will say this over and over again. Like, well, I was taken on board and I saw these ETs and they looked identical. They could have been twins. I'm like, huh. So there's something, twins is poorly understood here on Earth. There's if you do the research on it, because I started looking into it, there's quite a few cases of vanishing twins, a lot. And they're not entirely certain if they're being absorbed by the body or what's going on here.
Yeah.
But twins is far more popular, but only a few go to full term.
Yeah.
Something is going on here. This deserves more research. There's not been any research in it. That's kind of why I wanted to.
Oh, really?
A lot open on this.
Really, no one's really dug deep into the whole phenomenon of twins.
No,
I know on TV a lot. They have shows about hybrid babies and babies being taken and stuff, but not twins, just single
No, there's
children.
been studies on twins and some really fascinating ones. And like there was twins separated at birth, and they both married a woman by the same name. Both
Yeah,
named their dog Toy. Both,
yeah,
it's amazing these similarities from separated twins. But in terms of the UFO community, no, I don't know anyone who's done a twin study in terms of. And I found a bunch of cases involving twins. There's something going on here that I don't fully understand, and part of it might be coincidental. I don't know, because I haven't been able to do a statistical study on how is there a higher incidence of twins in the contactee community as to oppose not. And I think yes, there is, because there's a
yeah.
higher incidence of people who are adopted too. How
Oh,
weird is
right.
that? That people have no idea who their parents are and they're contactees. So that's a little odd.
I've read or spoke to you about higher incidences in contactees in general, like people that have been through trauma, the loss of a loved one. We've talked about that before. So you've found similarities in things before, but you never tripped across like the twin thing.
No, I kept running into it.
Yeah,
I didn't think much of it.
yeah.
People tried to link child abuse to it, and so I looked into child abuse. I'm like, no, so
No.
many people go through child abuse. There's
Sure.
no link to people who are
Right.
contactees.
It must be a genetic thing. Like maybe it's a genetic thing
Yeah,
that the T's are interested in, that humans can
yeah.
create twins.
I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but I'm thinking that quite a few contactees don't know it, but they have a twin out there.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
No, I'm sitting here trying to.
Yeah,
It's
Dolly
like,
didn't know it for years. Finally, her
yeah,
mother told her.
to discover that.
And she always knew on some level that, I know there's someone out there. Why do I feel like I have a sister? And man, oh man, that's got to be hard.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
So
yeah,
what I mean, you said you're coming out with a volume 6. So this is like an evolution for you, this series of books, and that's why it fascinated me. You just keep evolving with each iteration that you're writing. So what are you hoping to do in volume 6 that you didn't do in volume 5?
well, I don't want to really give away
All
the
right.
chapters because,
Yeah.
but it's the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
I found like, well, here's a little area of research nobody has even looked into.
Oh, I
Why has
get it.
this not been discovered?
Right.
And I don't mean to withhold knowledge or anything.
No, I get it.
But,
So you don't want to like put stuff out there for other
but
people to do before you do it. Yeah, I get that.
yeah, but it's the same sort of thing, you know, and it's so much fun to do. Like when I found a case of a UFO hovering over a prison, I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And then I like let's type in the keyword prison and see what comes up. Boom! It
No
was laid
kidding.
out in lavender. And I'm not talking about sightings only, but landings and people in their jail cell getting pulled on board.
Oh my I would have never thought about that.
Well, think
That's
about it, because we have 1 million people in prison in the United States, and if one in
yeah,
40 people are a contactee, you can
yeah.
bet there's contactees in the prison system, 100%.
Oh my
Can you
God.
imagine being a guard and going and looking in the cell? Uh-oh, we have a situation. The prisoner's gone, and then going back and he's in there.
Right, right. Yeah,
It's like,
that
come
would be
on, ETs, you could, if you're going to take a guy, why not just let him go?
right.
If he's innocent. I mean, I talked to a guy from Canada who was in prison for marijuana use.
Oh
Uh,
goodness.
and he called me up when he found out about my research. And I did an interview with him, but the recording didn't work. So I'm so upset. And he was very French and could barely speak English.
Oh.
And while I speak French, I can barely understand it. So I'm still hoping to reconnect with him. But yeah,
I
that's
think that
another.
could be a whole book in and of itself. UFO and prison contactees. I mean, that could be a book in
It
and of
could.
itself, Preston. Yeah,
So these are the
definitely.
kinds of things I love exploring.
Yeah.
And this Not From Here series, little avenues that haven't really been looked at.
Oh, I love it. It's so well written too. I love reading your books. So we have about 10 minutes left. Do you want to go through some of the comments, please? Because I always feel bad if someone asks a question and then we didn't get to it.
Yeah, well, okay, let's see here. I'm going to go from last to first, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why contactees see people they recognize on the ship, and they are not actually the person they are meeting on Earth. It's interesting because there are people who meet on board first and then later meet them in life.
I've read about that.
How amazing would that be?
Yeah.
Because I remember going to a convention in Arizona, and I saw this lady. Her name was Virginia Bennett. My sister's name is Victoria Dennett.
That's funny.
And the name was just close. But I'm looking at her. I'm like, I know this woman. And I'm looking at her, and she's starting to look at me, and we're just kind of looking at each other. I'm like, she's like, do I know you? We kind of both said that at the same time. And we went through all the places we might have met each other. No. To this day, I wonder about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, people will go on board and meet their twin, their absolute 100% twin. That has got to be the craziest thing ever. Man. Okay. Here's one. Could we have many more twins, but maybe one is taken? Rarely. Usually, if you're a twin, your twin is being taken.
Wow.
That happens with Audrey and Debbie Hewins, the Kinsella twins, the guys I interviewed, the Wiener twins. So yeah, I think probably if you're a twin, your other twin is being taken. But I'm still in the beginning stages of research when it comes to twins. So
fascinating stuff.
Okay, here's one. The subject of Dan Burish Crane has been recently revived after 10 years. What do Preston and Caroline think about him and his story? Dan, if I could interview Dan Burish, he's the guy I think who talked about ET working with the government. I would love to. I think probably some of this is disinformation. As far as Crane, I think the Judith Crane was the lady who handled some of the ET artifacts. And I'd have to look that up, but I think so. I think her story is legit because she was, I believe, a secretary or something at, if I remember correctly, Wright-Patterson. I might have this completely wrong. I'm sorry,
right. Yeah.
But yeah, there was a book recently written about her. Amazing. She finally went public. She's like, I don't know, 80 years old or something. And I'm so glad she did. Earl Grey, who recently passed away, God bless him, his mom was involved in all of this and never, ever went public. Wow. She told him something when he was like 3 years old, and he remembered it, and she turned pale. She's like, you were not supposed to remember this, honey. Don't ever talk about it.
Yeah.
But she worked for the government and in this subject of ET crash retrievals and handling ET hardware. So, man, oh man. What else do we got going on here?
Ingrid wants to know what your favorite case is.
Okay. I don't see this, but Dolly's mentioning it. Alien Girl wants to know what my favorite case is. Well, other than the Dolly Saffron case, which honestly is my favorite case for so many reasons, because I got to be a participant. I was taken on board. I mean, come on. So I have a few favorite cases. One is this lady I interviewed who won't let me use her real name. Lovely witness, a teacher, daycare worker, super intelligent, gave me a nice write-up. She's a great writer, but also allowed me to do a verbal interview with her. Was out jogging in Fallon, Illinois in 2006, thereabout, at 3 a.m. with her dog, and her dog stops and looks up at this T intersection about 100 feet ahead of her, where there's this big street light coming down, and she sees what she thinks is a man on stilts with extenders on his arm, walking, booking it down this street. Kyle Avenue, it's called. You can look this up. I found the place. And the dog's looking at him, she's looking at him, and it walks right under the streetlight. This is a 15, 20-foot tall streetlight,
Yeah.
right? And so she could see exactly how tall this thing was. It was 15 feet tall. And it
Oh,
wasn't, of course, it was not a man on stilts walking
mhm.
down this street at 3 a.m., which would make no sense. It was
Right.
a mantid. It was a praying mantis.
Oh, I've heard so much about them. They scare me. I can't.
I love this lady because get this. She's watching it. She says it's pale, blotchy gray. It's taking 6-foot strides. It's got its head down. It's scanning back and forth as if looking for its car keys or something. There's a school on one side, a cornfield on the other. She's an excellent observer, right? Her dog is watching it. She's watching it go by. She knows exactly how tall it was because she measured it against the streetlight.
Yeah.
And it goes off to the left there. And so what does she do? She didn't run around and go back home like probably most of us. She runs after it.
No, I'm out. That would not be me.
I love this lady. I'm like, you're kidding me. She's like, no. And she and her dog ran up to it and got just in time to see it go into the cornfield.
Wow.
And I'm like, the cornfield, is there anything out there? She's like, no, it's a cornfield. I'm like, is there anything in this area? Anything at all? Because there's got to be a reason. I'm like, did you see a UFO? She's like, no, I didn't see one. And she's like, well, all I can tell you is that 6 miles away as the crow flies is Scott Air Force Base.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
She invited a colonel over, or her husband did, from Scott Air Force Base, and she spilled out the story accidentally. He gave her this kind of look, the side eye, right? And all he would say is, yeah, weird things happen. Yeah, I bet they do. I'm like, did you go jogging the next morning? She's like, of course I did.
She had no fear.
Okay.
I don't like bugs, so
That's one of my favorite stories, but I've got quite a few of them. Yeah, she was such a neat lady. She was so intelligent. Just really, I'm like, did you share it with anybody? She's like, are you kidding? No. She finally did come forward and shared it anonymously with a website, and told her family, and that was it. Crazy.
Preston, it's always such a joy speaking with you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. This has been such an insightful conversation, and like your dedication to exploring like the most unique and overlooked aspects of this phenomenon is really showcased in Not From Here, Selected UFO Articles, Volume 5. So folks, be sure to check out, if I'm sure many of you have already, his website and his books. And I when I picked up this book, I couldn't put it down. It was one of those things where you just need to finish it. So I think I ate dinner at 10 o'clock that night because of you, Preston.
I'm so sorry.
It was really good. And then of course, you have to take notes and stuff, but it was excellent. Thank you so much for today's conversation. I absolutely adore speaking with you and Dolly. I'm going to be reaching out to Dolly because I've got a boatload of questions for her too. So anything you want to say in closing about your book or anything you're working on? We have like a minute left. And before we do that, I have to give props to, we have 2 shows coming up. Right after mine is Beneath the Hollow Moon with Carrie Lynn Shellhorn and Lori Lee Potvin. So definitely check that out. I think it starts at 7:10, coming up soon. And then after her, we have The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche. She's the manager of the network. You have to watch her shows. They're awesome. And that one is E.T. Races, who have and still do connect with humanity, with Sean Hazlitt. So don't leave. Stick around for those 2 shows, folks. And real quick, tomorrow, I have, because it's the 4th of July, I have a replay on that I did before I joined this wonderful, beloved network with a fellow named George H. Lewis. And I wanted to replay it so everybody, who has nothing better to do, it'll be on at 3. You can put it on in the background, 3 p.m. EST tomorrow. It's called Ascending into 5G Consciousness. a cosmic awakening is upon us. So definitely check out my show tomorrow at 3 p.m. So, Preston, what do you have to say? What are you working on now? Well, we know you're working on a lot of things, but what's like your top priority? And what were you hoping to do in volume 5? Do you think you achieved that? And is that like the driving force for you to create number 6?
All right. Let me just pop up this comment real fast from Night's Glory. It's not wise to default to believing a person based on their credentials. Thank you. I absolutely 100% agree. You need to talk to them. You need to vet the case, because people in high positions lie too. And let's face it, just because you're an ordinary citizen doesn't mean you didn't have an experience.
That is so true. Or
Right?
you're any unbelievable, right?
Exactly. But yeah, I am hoping to get symmetry done too as soon as possible. We really only touched the surface with Dolly's experiences, but this one's going to go much deeper into the ET knowledge that she's learned, and really directly from the ETs. As far as volume, I thought volume 5 was going to be it, but then I'm finding new patterns. And this is what's so really lovely, really, about the whole UFO phenomenon, for lack of a better word. I hate that word, but fine. Is that it offers us an opportunity to really think outside of the box, gain new knowledge, find new paradigms, explore things we'd never in a million years have thought of.
Yeah.
So this is what I so love about doing UFO research, because you go down one rabbit hole and you realize, well, that rabbit hole has 5 rabbit holes in it.
Right.
And it's so much fun. And I love it, love it, love it when I'm like, this is a one-off. This is so weird. This could never have happened. And I find a bunch of confirmation for it. Right. So that's basically what the whole series is about. Some cases that people wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Yeah. I mean, I covered the whole alien anal probe phenomena because.
Oh, I can't believe I never asked you about that.
I did a whole chapter on that, and I had fun with it. Believe me, I did. I got a little jokey but I also covered it in a very serious way because it's so misinformed and so focused on in a way that's unfair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ridicule people go through.
Oh, I know. It's definitely a targeted joke in the community still. But we have to go because we have a show coming up. Somebody else is going to be popping in. Preston, thank you again so much, and we're definitely going to have you back again soon.
Yay. Thanks, Caroline. A true honor and a pleasure. Love you very much.
Everyone in the chat. Bye-bye, everybody.